Before we start, I need a favor. Let me know in the comments what's been done right or wrong. This also helps me create better content for you all. And check out our Creepy Tales playlist, .ca. Videos with the most views, likes, and comments will form the channel. And now we begin. Chapter 1. The screaming started at 3:17 in the morning. I bolted upright in our tent, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Sarah's sleeping bag lay empty beside me, still warm but rapidly cooling in the mountain air. The zipper of our tent hung open, swaying in the breeze like a mouth gasping for breath. "Sarah?" My voice cracked in the darkness. Only silence answered back, thick and suffocating. I grabbed my flashlight with trembling fingers, the beam cutting through the black forest beyond our campsite. Pine trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their branches reaching toward me with gnarled fingers. The screaming had stopped as suddenly as it began, but something else filled the void. A low, guttural sound drifted from the tree line, not quite human, not quite animal. My skin crawled as I recognized it as laughter. I pulled on my boots without bothering to tie them and stumbled out of the tent. "Sarah, where are you?" The campfire had died to glowing embers, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move independently of the flames. Sarah's hiking boots sat neatly beside the fire ring, laces still tied. She would never leave them behind willingly. I followed the beam of my flashlight toward the sound, my bare legs scratched by underbrush. 20 yards into the forest, I found her, or what remained of our peaceful evening. Deep gouges scarred the earth where something had been dragged. The marks were too large for human hands, too deliberate for an animal attack. Sarah's torn pajama top hung from a low branch like a surrender flag. "Help me." The voice was so faint I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. But I knew that voice better than my own heartbeat. Chapter 2. I ran deeper into the forest, following the drag marks and my wife's desperate whispers carried on the wind. Branches tore at my face and arms, but I barely felt the pain. Sarah was alive, and that was all that mattered. The trail led uphill, winding between massive boulders and fallen logs. My flashlight beam caught glimpses of disturbed earth, broken twigs, and something else that made my stomach lurch. Dark stains on the rocks that looked too thick to be water. "Sarah, I'm coming," I called out, not caring what else might hear me. A response came from somewhere ahead, but the words were muffled, distorted. I pushed myself harder, lungs burning in the thin mountain air. The trail curved around a granite outcropping, and I emerged into a small clearing. That's when I saw him. The park ranger stood with his back to me, his broad shoulders blocking my view of what lay beyond. He wore the standard uniform, dark green shirt, khaki pants, wide-brimmed hat. But something was wrong with his posture, the way he held himself too still, like a predator waiting to strike. "Excuse me," I said, relief flooding through me. "Thank God you're here. My wife, she's been taken by something. I've been following the trail and—" He turned around slowly, and my words died in my throat. His face was pale in the moonlight, features sharp and angular in ways that seemed almost carved from stone, but it was his eyes that made me take a step backward. They reflected my flashlight beam like an animal's, glowing with an unnatural amber light. "Your wife is safe," he said, his voice carrying an odd resonance that seemed to echo from multiple directions at once. "She's exactly where she needs to be." Behind him, I caught a glimpse of Sarah. She was bound to a tree, her mouth covered with duct tape, her eyes wide with terror. When she saw me, she began struggling frantically against her restraints. "Let her go." I took a step forward, my hands clenched into fists. "Whatever you want, we can work this out. Just let her go." The ranger smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too numerous. I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, she's part of something much larger now. Something you wouldn't understand. Chapter 3. I lunged forward without thinking, every instinct screaming at me to get to Sarah. The ranger didn't move until I was almost on top of him, then he shifted slightly to the side. My momentum carried me past him, and I stumbled, catching myself against the tree where Sarah was bound. Her muffled sobs broke my heart. I reached for the ropes, but the ranger's hand clamped down on my shoulder with crushing force. He lifted me off the ground like I weighed nothing and threw me across the clearing. I hit the ground hard, rocks digging into my back. Before I could recover, he was standing over me, that terrible smile still stretched across his face. "You really don't understand," he said, crouching down beside me. "This isn't about what I want. This is about what she is." "She's my wife," I gasped, tasting blood. "She's a schoolteacher from Denver. There's nothing special about her." The ranger tilted his head, studying me like I was some fascinating specimen. "Is that what you think? That she's just another human?" He gestured toward Sarah, and I noticed something I'd missed in my panic. Her eyes weren't just filled with fear. They were changing color, shifting from brown to the same amber glow I'd seen in the ranger's face. "No," I whispered. "She's been calling to us for months," the ranger continued. "Every night, in her dreams. She doesn't even know she's doing it, but we can hear her. The awakening is beginning." I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't support me. The ranger's grip had done something to my shoulder, and my left arm hung useless at my side. "The awakening of what?" His smile widened impossibly. "Of what she really is, what she's always been, beneath that fragile human shell." Sarah's struggles had stopped. She was staring at the ranger with an expression I'd never seen before. Not fear, but recognition, like she was remembering something she'd forgotten. "Sarah, don't listen to him," I pleaded. "You're not whatever he says you are. You're human. You're my wife." But even as I said it, I could see the changes beginning. Her fingernails were growing longer, sharper. Her skin was taking on a pale, almost luminescent quality. The ranger stood up, brushing dirt from his knees. "The transformation will be complete by dawn. Until then, I suggest you say your goodbyes." Chapter 4. I spent the next hour watching my wife become something else. It started with her eyes, the brown irises I'd gazed into for 7 years of marriage, slowly bleeding away to that unnatural amber. Then her fingernails extended into claws that cut through the ropes binding her wrists like they were made of paper. But she didn't run. She didn't even remove the tape from her mouth. She just sat there, staring at the ranger with growing fascination. "What are you doing to her?" I demanded, though my voice came out as barely more than a whisper. The ranger had settled himself on a fallen log, perfectly at ease. "I'm not doing anything. This is her nature asserting itself. It's quite beautiful, really. She's human. She's always been human." "Has she?" He pulled out a thermos and poured himself coffee like this was a casual camping trip. "Tell me, has she ever done anything that struck you as unusual?" I wanted to say no immediately, but the words stuck in my throat, because there had been things, small things I'd dismissed or explained away. The way she sometimes knew things she shouldn't know, like when my mother was going to call before the phone rang, or when it was going to rain despite clear skies. How she could find lost objects by closing her eyes and walking straight to them. The dreams she'd been having lately, waking up speaking words in a language that didn't sound like any I'd ever heard. "Those are just coincidences," I said, but even I could hear the doubt in my voice. The ranger chuckled. "Coincidences. That's what humans call everything they can't understand." Sarah was changing more rapidly now. Her hair was darkening from blonde to black. and her skin had taken on an almost translucent quality. I could see veins pulsing beneath the surface, but they didn't look like human veins. They formed patterns, like writing in a script I couldn't read. "The bloodline has been dormant for generations," the ranger explained, sipping his coffee. "But it never truly disappears. It just waits for the right moment to resurface." "What bloodline?" "The covenant of the deep woods. An ancient pact between your world and ours. Sarah carries the blood of the original signatories." My shoulder throbbed, but I managed to pull myself to my feet. "This is insane. You're talking about fairy tales." "Am I?" He gestured toward Sarah again. She had finally removed the tape from her mouth, and when she spoke, her voice carried the same otherworldly resonance as the ranger's. "David," she said, and my name sounded different coming from her transformed lips. "I remember now. I remember what I am." Chapter 5. The woman who had been my wife looked at me with eyes that held depths I'd never seen before. When she smiled, I saw that her teeth had changed too, not as dramatically as the ranger's, but sharp enough to remind me that she was no longer entirely human. "I've been dreaming of this place for months," she said, her voice carrying an echo that seemed to come from everywhere at once. But they weren't dreams, were they? They were memories. The ranger nodded approvingly. "The bloodline remembers, even when the conscious mind forgets. You've been coming here in spirit, preparing for this moment." "Sarah, you have to fight this," I pleaded. "Whatever's happening to you, you can fight it. You're stronger than this." She turned to me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married. "David, I can see things now. I can see the world as it really is, not the limited version humans perceive. I don't care what you can see, I care about you." "This is me," she said gently. "This is who I've always been, underneath. Don't you want me to be complete?" I looked around the clearing desperately, searching for something, anything that might help me understand what was happening. The ranger watched me with amusement, clearly enjoying my confusion. "The old ways are returning," he said. "Humanity had its time, but that time is ending. The barriers between worlds are weakening, and those with the ancient blood are awakening to their true nature." "You're talking about the end of the world." "I'm talking about the beginning of a new one." Sarah stood up gracefully, her movements fluid in ways that defied human anatomy. "David, you could come with us. The ranger says there might be old blood in your lineage too. It's rare, but not impossible." "I don't want to come with you. I want you to come home with me." Her expression grew sad. "I can't go back to that life. I can't pretend to be something I'm not anymore." The ranger finished his coffee and stood up. "The transformation is nearly complete. Soon, she'll be ready to take her place among us." "Among who?" "The guardians of the deep places, the watchers in the woods, the ones who ensure the old bargains are kept." I tried to think of something, anything that might bring Sarah back to me. "What about our life together? What about the house we bought, the plans we made?" "Human concerns," the ranger said dismissively. "She's beyond such things now." But I saw Sarah hesitate, and I pressed on. "What about the children we wanted to have? What about growing old together?" "David," she took a step toward me, and I saw uncertainty in her transformed features. The ranger's expression darkened. "Don't let human sentiments cloud your awakening. You know what you are now." "I know what I am," Sarah said quietly, "but I also know what I was." For the first time since this nightmare began, the ranger looked genuinely concerned. Chapter 6. The internal struggle playing out across Sarah's face gave me hope. She stood between the ranger and me, her new nature warring with 7 years of shared memories. I could see the conflict in her amber eyes, the otherworldly intelligence battling against the woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes. "Sarah, remember our wedding day?" I said, taking a careful step toward her. "You wore your grandmother's ring, and it rained during the ceremony. You said it was good luck." "I remember," she whispered, and her voice sounded more human than it had since the transformation began. The ranger moved closer, his casual demeanor replaced by something more predatory. "Don't let him anchor you to a life that was never real. You were sleepwalking through an existence that couldn't contain your true self." "It was real to me," Sarah said, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping in. "Was it?" The ranger's voice took on a hypnotic quality. "Or were you just playing a role, pretending to be satisfied with human limitations?" I watched in horror as Sarah's resolve began to waver. The ranger was right about one thing. She had always seemed somehow apart from the world around her, like she was observing rather than truly participating. "You always said you felt like you were looking at life through glass," I said desperately. "But that doesn't mean you're not human. It just means you're sensitive, aware of things others miss." "I could never quite connect," she admitted. "Even with you, David, there was always something between us, some barrier I couldn't explain." The ranger smiled triumphantly. "Because you were meant for something greater than human love. You were meant to bridge worlds, to serve as a guardian between the seen and unseen realms." Sarah's form began to change again, becoming less human and more something else entirely. Her skin took on a bark-like texture, and her hair moved as if blown by a wind I couldn't feel. "Don't lose yourself," I begged. "Whatever you're becoming, don't lose who you are." "Who I am is changing," she said, her voice growing distant. "I can feel the forest calling to me, David. I can hear the songs of trees and the whispers of streams. There's a whole world I never knew existed." The ranger nodded approvingly. "The awakening is nearly complete. Soon, you'll take your place as one of the eternal guardians." "Eternal?" I looked between them. "You mean she'll never be human again?" "Why would she want to be?" The ranger's amber eyes gleamed. "Humans live for decades. We exist for centuries. Humans see only the surface of things. We perceive the deeper truths." Sarah was changing more rapidly now, her form becoming fluid, shifting between human and something that belonged to the deep woods. I could feel her slipping away from me, not just physically but spiritually. "If you do this," I said, "what happens to the life we built together?" She looked at me with something that might have been pity. "It becomes a memory, David. A brief, beautiful memory of what I was before I became what I meant to be." The ranger stepped closer to Sarah, and I realized that my time was running out. Whatever window existed for reaching her was closing fast. "Then I'm coming with you," I said. Both of them turned to stare at me. "David, no," Sarah said. "You don't understand what you're asking. I understand that I love you. I understand that 7 years of marriage doesn't just disappear because you're transforming into something else." The ranger laughed, but it was a sound without humor. "Love is a human concept. It has no place in what she's becoming." "Then make it have a place," I challenged. "If you're so powerful, if you're beyond human limitations, then you should be able to accommodate human emotions." For the first time, the ranger looked genuinely angry. Chapter 7. The ranger's face began to change, his human facade melting away like wax in a flame, his features elongated, becoming predatory and sharp. His limbs stretched unnaturally, joints bending in directions that made my stomach turn. What had appeared to be a park ranger's uniform revealed itself as something far more sinister, bark-like skin that seemed to shift and move on its own. "You think you can bargain with forces beyond your comprehension?" His voice had become a grinding whisper, like wind through dead leaves. You think your human emotions have any relevance to what we are? But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was watching Sarah, and I could see that my words had affected her. The transformation had slowed, as if she was fighting against it. Sarah, you don't have to choose between who you were and who you're becoming, I said. You can be both. The creature that had been the ranger hissed in frustration. Impossible. The awakening requires complete surrender of the human self. Says who? I stepped closer to Sarah, ignoring the monster's growing agitation. Who made that rule? The ancient covenant was written by someone, I interrupted, which means it can be rewritten. Sarah's eyes widened, and for a moment, they flickered back to brown. David, what are you saying? I'm saying that maybe the old ways aren't the only ways. Maybe evolution means finding new paths, not just following old ones. The ranger creature let out a shriek of rage and lunged at me with claws extended. I dove to the side, but I wasn't fast enough. His talons raked across my chest, tearing through my shirt and leaving deep gashes in my skin. I hit the ground hard, blood streaming from the wounds. The creature loomed over me, no longer even remotely human. It was something from the deepest parts of the forest, all teeth and claws and ancient hunger. You will not interfere with the awakening, it snarled. The bloodline will be completed. But as it raised its claws for the killing blow, Sarah stepped between us. Stop, she said, and power rang in her voice. The creature actually took a step back. You dare command me, it hissed. I dare command myself, she replied, and I choose to protect what I love. Her form was shifting again, but this time it was different. Instead of becoming something alien and other, she was becoming something that bridged both worlds. She retained her human shape but gained the otherworldly grace and power of her awakened nature. The covenant doesn't require me to abandon my humanity, she said, her voice carrying newfound authority. It requires me to embrace my full nature, all of it. The creature backed away, its amber eyes blazing with fury. You don't understand what you're doing. The balance will be maintained, Sarah finished, but on my terms, not yours. She helped me to my feet, her touch warm and familiar despite the changes in her appearance. David, I'm sorry. I was so overwhelmed by what I was becoming that I forgot what I already was. The creature let out another shriek of rage and launched itself at both of us. But this time, Sarah was ready. She raised her hand, and the air around us shimmered with energy. The creature struck an invisible barrier and was thrown backward into the trees. Run, Sarah said urgently. I can hold it off, but not for long. I'm not leaving you. You have to. This isn't over, and I need to know you're safe. Before I could argue, the creature emerged from the trees, its form even more monstrous than before. It had abandoned any pretense of human shape and now resembled something from humanity's darkest nightmares. Sarah's barrier flickered, and I knew she was right. We needed to get out of there. Chapter 8. We ran through the forest as the creature's howls echoed behind us. Sarah moved with inhuman grace, easily keeping pace despite my wounded condition. But I could hear the thing crashing through the underbrush, gaining on us with every step. This way, Sarah said, veering left toward a steep, rocky slope. There's a cave system up ahead. How do you know that? I can sense it. The awakening. It's given me awareness of the land itself. We scrambled up the slope, loose rocks sliding beneath our feet. My chest burned where the creature's claws had raked me, and I could feel blood soaking through my torn shirt, but adrenaline kept me moving. The cave entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for us to squeeze through single file. Sarah went first, and I followed, hoping we weren't trapping ourselves in a dead end. Inside, the cave opened into a larger chamber. Sarah's eyes were glowing softly in the darkness, providing enough light to see by. Ancient symbols covered the walls, carved deep into the stone. "David, look at this," she whispered, running her fingers over the carvings. "These are records of the original covenant." I examined the symbols, though they meant nothing to me. "What do they say?" "They tell the story of the first awakening, centuries ago. But David, they also tell of others who tried to walk between worlds, to maintain their humanity while embracing their nature. What happened to them?" Her expression grew troubled. "Most were destroyed by guardians like the one pursuing us. The Covenant has been interpreted as requiring complete transformation, abandoning the human self entirely." A thunderous crash echoed from the cave entrance. The creature had found us. "But some succeeded," Sarah continued urgently. "Some found a way to bridge both worlds without losing themselves. They became something new, something the old guardians didn't understand. Sarah, we need to go deeper into the cave." "No, David, we need to face this." She turned to me, her amber eyes blazing with determination. "I understand now what I'm supposed to be. Not just a guardian of the old ways, but a bridge to something new." The creature's voice echoed through the cave, distorted by the stone walls. "You cannot hide from your destiny, child of the Covenant. You cannot escape what you are." "I'm not trying to escape," Sarah called back. "I'm trying to evolve." She stepped toward the cave entrance, power radiating from her transformed form. I tried to follow, but she held up a hand to stop me. "Stay here," she said. "Let me try something." "Sarah, don't." But she was already walking toward the entrance, her form shifting and changing as she moved. She was becoming something I'd never seen before, something that combined the best of both worlds rather than abandoning one for the other. The creature appeared at the cave mouth, its monstrous form filling the entrance. When it saw Sarah, it let out a sound of confusion and rage. "What are you?" it demanded. "I'm what the Covenant was always meant to create," Sarah replied. "Not a servant of the old ways, but a guide to the new ones." The creature lunged at her, but Sarah didn't dodge. Instead, she reached out and touched its twisted form. Light flowed from her fingers, and the creature's howl of rage transformed into something else entirely. Chapter 9. The light that flowed from Sarah's touch wasn't harsh or burning. It was gentle, like moonlight filtering through leaves. Where it touched the creature, its monstrous form began to shift and change, just as Sarah's had. But instead of becoming more human, it was becoming more itself. The twisted, rage-filled thing that had pursued us through the forest was revealing its true nature underneath the corruption of centuries of anger and isolation. "What are you doing to me?" the creature gasped, its voice losing its grinding quality. "I'm showing you what you forgot," Sarah said softly. "You weren't always consumed by rage. Once, you were a guardian who protected both worlds, not just one." The creature's form continued to change, becoming less monstrous and more noble. It was still clearly not human, but it no longer radiated the sense of ancient malevolence that had terrified me. "I remember," it whispered, and its voice carried wonder instead of threat. "I remember when the Covenant was new, when we worked together with humans instead of ruling over them." Sarah stepped back, her own form stabilizing into something that was recognizably her but enhanced, elevated. The Covenant was corrupted over time. Fear and misunderstanding turned cooperation into domination. The former creature, I could see now that it had once been something like a forest spirit, a protector of the wild places, looked around the cave with new understanding. "The symbols," it said, gesturing to the carved walls. "They tell the true story, not the version that's been passed down through generations of guardians. The awakening isn't supposed to destroy the human self, Sarah explained. It's supposed to expand it, to create beings who can exist in both worlds and protect the balance between them. I stepped forward cautiously. So what does this mean for us? Sarah turned to me, and I could see love in her transformed features, not the obsessive possession that had driven the creature's pursuit, but the genuine affection that had grown between us over 7 years of marriage. It means we can find a way forward, she said. I don't have to choose between what I was and what I'm becoming. I can be both. The spirit nodded slowly. But there will be others who don't understand. The old guardians have enforced the traditional interpretation of the covenant for centuries. They will see this as heresy. Then we'll have to show them a better way, Sarah said with determination. A new sound echoed through the cave, not the crash of pursuit, but something else. Howling, but not from any creature I'd heard before. It was wild and free, carrying notes of both sorrow and joy. The spirit's eyes widened. The wolves, they're coming. Is that bad? I asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted. I can sense them, but I can't tell if they're natural wolves or something else entirely. The howling grew closer, and I could hear the sound of many feet padding through the cave system. The spirit moved protectively in front of us, but its posture wasn't entirely defensive. They're responding to the change, it said. The awakening of a new type of guardian calls to all the creatures of the deep woods. Sarah closed her eyes, extending her senses. They're not coming to hunt us. They're coming to witness. The first wolf appeared at the cave entrance, and I immediately knew this was no ordinary animal. It was larger than any wolf I'd ever seen, with eyes that held an intelligence that seemed almost human. Behind it came others, a pack of at least a dozen. They entered the cave slowly, their movements deliberate and respectful. The largest wolf approached Sarah and, to my amazement, bowed its head. They recognize what you've become, the spirit said in wonder. The true guardians of the forest are acknowledging your authority. Sarah reached out tentatively and touched the wolf's head. It looked up at her with what could only be described as approval. We're not alone, she said, looking at me with tears in her eyes. We're not the only ones who believe there has to be a better way. Chapter 10. Dawn was breaking as we emerged from the cave, but the world looked different now. Where before I'd seen only trees and rocks, and ordinary forest, I could now perceive the deeper currents that flowed beneath the surface. Sarah's awakening had somehow opened my eyes to things I'd never noticed before. The pack of wolves surrounded us as we walked, not as guards but as companions. I could feel their contentment, their sense that something long awaited had finally come to pass. David, Sarah said as we reached the clearing where this nightmare had begun. I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person I was yesterday. I know, I replied, and I meant it, but you're still you. You're still the woman who cries at sad movies and burns toast and talks to plants like they can hear you. She smiled, and it was the same smile I'd fallen in love with, just enhanced by the otherworldly grace she gained. I'm more than that now, though. I have responsibilities I never imagined. We have responsibilities, I corrected. You said I might have some of the old blood too. Whether I do or not, I'm not walking away from this. The spirit had followed us from the cave, its form continuing to evolve as it remembered what it had once been. The old guardians will come, it warned. They won't accept this change easily. Then we'll be ready for them, Sarah said with quiet confidence. One of the larger wolves padded over to me and looked up with those unnaturally intelligent eyes. When it opened its mouth, I heard something impossible. Words, clear as day, though its lips never moved. You have been chosen, It said directly into my mind. The awakening of one calls to the awakening of another. What does that mean? I asked aloud. Sarah's eyes widened. You can hear them? I can hear this one. The wolf's mental voice carried amusement. The bonds of true love create bridges between souls. Your wife's awakening has awakened something in you as well. I looked at my hands and noticed that the wounds from the creature's claws were healing rapidly, leaving only faint scars. I'm changing too. Not into what I became, Sarah said quickly, into something different, something that complements what I am. The spirit nodded approvingly. A guardian pair. It's been prophesied in the oldest texts, but we thought it was just legend. What kind of guardian am I becoming? I asked. The wolf's voice was warm in my mind. A bridge builder, one who helps others understand and accept change. Your wife protects the balance between worlds. You protect the balance between different ways of thinking. Sarah took my hand, and I felt the rightness of it. We were changing together, becoming something new while remaining ourselves. So what happens now? I asked. Now we go home, Sarah said. We pack up our campsite, we drive back to Denver, and we figure out how to live as what we've become. And the old guardians? The spirit's expression grew serious. They will come, but they will find us ready for them. All of us. The wolf pack spread out around us as we walked back toward our campsite, and I realized that we were no longer alone in the world. We had allies now, protectors who believed in the same vision of cooperation and evolution that Sarah embodied. Our tent was still there, our car still parked at the trailhead. To anyone else, it would look like we'd simply gone for an early morning hike, but everything had changed. As we packed our gear, I caught Sarah watching me with a mixture of love and concern. "Are you okay with this?" she asked. "With what we're becoming?" I looked at her, my wife, transformed but still recognizably herself, powerful but still gentle, otherworldly but still grounded in the love we shared. Then I looked at the wolves waiting patiently at the edge of our campsite, and at the spirit who had become our ally and guide. "I'm more than okay with it," I said. "I think this is what we were always meant to be." As we drove away from the forest, I could see the wolves in the rearview mirror, watching until we disappeared around a bend in the road, but I knew we hadn't left them behind. They were part of us now, just as we were part of something larger than ourselves. Sarah reached over and took my hand, her touch warm and familiar despite all the changes. "Ready for the next adventure?" she asked. I squeezed her hand and smiled. "With you, always." The forest fell away behind us, but we carried its essence with us. We were guardians now, protectors of the balance between worlds. And somewhere behind us, I could still hear the wolves singing their ancient songs, welcoming us to our new life. Whether they were natural wolves or something more, I no longer cared. What mattered was that we were no longer alone, and we never would be again.